Lawyer, and let him kick this off.
That was awesome. Thank you. Crush it. I will. Hey, everybody. Was that awesome? Mary goes to high school just down the street from where I live. Talk about a small world. So I've got a confession to make. Oh, I don't know, back in the mid-'80s, I had a temporary lapse of good judgment, and I thought it would be a good idea to go to law school. Now, we all know there's way too many lawyers in the world, but I think the silver lining on that particular discussion or decision is that I'm all in on digital, I'm all in on social, I absolutely love live streaming, and I'm here for you. I understand what creatives need, what they want, what they desire. And so hopefully during today's presentation, I'm going to share 6 legal tips to help all of you as creatives, as social media consulting companies, as producers of media, avoid claims, avoid litigation, and avoid lawsuits. That's what it's all about. Assuming my clicker works. We there? Oh, wow. Hang on. Hang on. Oh, my goodness. All right. So, we all know that stories are very, very important when it comes to social, and I just want to share a little bit about my story with you to put things into context as to what I'll be sharing. I'm going to run through this rather quickly. We are a little bit behind schedule, but, you know, as we all know, facts tell and stories sell. And I think when it comes to social media, there's nothing more important in social than relationships. And relationships, good relationships, will keep you out of legal trouble. Social media platforms come and go. Good relationships last a lifetime. This is me. I'm riding behind my dad, Jack Jackson, on his horse Jubilee. That's my little sister up front. And we grew up on a ranch in Tucson, Arizona. And that's a picture of the ranch. The mountains behind there are the Tucson Mountains. I was the first person to ever fly a hang glider off the top of those mountains. It was fun. Great way to grow up. My dad was one of the Marlboro men. Remember the Marlboro cowboy commercials? So that was my dad, and we were doing a week-long ride in southern Arizona together. And my mom was a model before she had me. I ruined everything, but she's on the cover of Newsweek and did a lot of modeling while we were growing up. Our ranch had a lot of guests that came out, and this is really what got me motivated in social media. It's all about relationships. Walt Disney was a guest at the ranch. John Wayne was a guest at the ranch. And I got a chance to watch my folks interact with a lot of really amazing people. I did a lot of fun things when I was young that have nothing to do with law, but everything to do with what I'll be talking to you about today. Used to enjoy riding horses, kind of moved past that and started hang gliding all over southern Arizona and California. Raced motocross for 38 years, up until a couple of years ago where it just started hurting too much every time I took a spill. Rolled that over into coaching Little League. My kids up front someplace in that picture. Flying drones over the ocean before court early in the morning before anybody else is up. Traveling with my family. That was a picture taken just a month and a half ago. We were traveling through Europe. My wife is my partner. We met in law school, and we've been married for the last 28 years. And I was telling Mary, who just sang, our son Garrett goes to Danny Hills High School, which is just down the street from Mission Viejo High School. That's Blue. I don't think me sharing my life with you without a picture of our basset hound Blue would be complete. And that's my rock and what gets me going every single day and helps me make smart decisions. It's all about relationships. So let me ask you guys a question. Before I took the stage, if you didn't know me or follow me on social, do you feel a little bit different about me right now as a lawyer than when I was introduced 5 minutes ago? You know, it's all about relationships. And the reason relationships are so important is because if you have good business relationships, it helps you get through problems. It helps avoid claims. It helps avoid lawsuits. It's not always the case, but it's something that I've watched happen over and over. And when it comes to social media, I've found this to be a constant. I want to tell you a little bit about Sammy the Surfer. Sammy the Surfer designed a surfboard, and he's right up here off of Malibu. And this surfboard has a device embedded within it that allows the surfboard to extend in length or retract in length depending on the swells, depending on what type of waves that Sammy's going to be surfing. And do we have any surfers here in the group? Okay, we got one. So you know Sammy, right? Great surfboards. So Sammy sells his surfboards all over the world. And, but there's a problem. There's a problem because what Sammy didn't think about when he put together these surfboards, and by the way, each and every one of you is Sammy. You may not be selling surfboards. You may be selling widgets. You may be selling apps. You may be selling social media services. You may be selling some type of product or service. But whatever you're selling, the 6 tips I'll be sharing with you through Sammy the Surfer, they apply to you. These are the 6 most common issues I see with people doing business online. If you follow these tips correctly, it'll save you from problems that Sammy the Surfer had when he sold a surfboard to an individual in Africa, South Africa, and while that board was on top of his car, and that's the way we transport our boards from the house to the ocean, because of the device that Sammy put inside the surfboard, it snapped off, and half of his surfboard flew backwards into the air right into Elon Musk's brand new Tesla. I'm making this up, so it's not a real story. It's okay. And it caused several $100,000 worth of damage. And it's because Sammy didn't really think through exactly how he should be constructing this surfboard. So whatever your surfboard is in life, I want you to keep in mind the following 6 tips to keep you out of trouble. Number 1, I'd like you to do business as a corporation or a limited liability company. How many people in here who are doing business online are doing business as a corporation or a limited liability company? Raise your hands. Okay, about half of you, and that's really, really smart. The reason it's smart is because when Sammy gets a claim or lawsuit brought against him by Elon Musk for the damage to his car, Sammy's personal bank accounts, Sammy's home, Sammy's custom surfboard collection that's hanging in his garage, all of those things are protected from liability because of his company. It's really important that you do business as a limited liability company or a corporation to separate your business assets from your personal assets. The choice you make will depend upon what type of business you're running, and it will depend on what state you're doing your business in. But it's something that I would like each and every one of you to look at if you're not already a properly set up LLC or a limited corporation. Number 2, you have to respect intellectual property rights, okay? Sammy got this idea of the extended surfboard device that he embeds in surfboards from a company that he worked for 6 months earlier. And when he left that company, he rolled in and started his own company and took that idea and made it his own. That's a big no-no. And I see a lot of people on social media, regardless of the product or service that they're selling or producing, using other people's ideas and running with those ideas, sometimes in a very reckless fashion, to roll out their own ideas. And while it's okay sometimes to do that, you have to be aware that if you did not create the content, if you did not come up with the idea, it's probably not your content, your photograph, your image, your video, your idea to use for your own business purposes, okay? So with respect to where you get your ideas from, the content you use, the videos you use, the audios you use in the background of what you're doing, make sure you've got permission from the creator of that content to use that content. Otherwise, you probably don't. There are some exceptions to that rule. The exceptions to that rule are what are called the fair use doctrine. Under the fair use doctrine, if you're creating content and using somebody else's idea, using somebody else's photographs, somebody else's audio or video, somebody else's music, like Mary's music, if I'm using it for educational purposes, if I'm using it in a news broadcast, if I'm using it to critique a situation, a breaking news story, there are exceptions where the law says it's okay to use somebody else's content without their permission. The problem with this exception is that it's a gray area. It's not black and white. So I always tell my clients, always reach out and ask the content creator for permission to use their content before you do. And most of the time in social media, what we've realized is it's okay to do that. It's okay to give other people permission to use your content. We understand the power of sharing. And when it comes to digital, there's no stronger power than having other people share your content. When Sammy is sitting out waiting for the next set to come in, he's sitting out on the ocean and he's got his water-protected iPhone and he's live streaming to the world, what Sammy did do correctly is when he went live onto his iPhone and broadcasted, he let everyone know that his name's Sammy the Surfer, and he's sharing today's live stream from Sammy Surfing Inc. And then he rolled into his live stream. He let the world know that they were listening to a live stream and watching a live stream that was being shared by a company, as opposed to Sammy the individual. This is a huge problem that I see with live streaming and other types of social media content today. I understand that we want to personalize everything that we do, but a big problem I see is when I watch somebody's live stream, I don't know if they're live streaming as an individual or are they live streaming on behalf of their company. And unless you make it clear to the consumer that your live stream is being brought by the XYZ company, by Sammy Surfing Inc., Sammy's personal assets may be exposed to liability. So it's a really simple thing to do. Just when you go live, when you share a post, if it's something where the consumer who's watching it, who's digesting it, isn't going to be sure as to whether or not it's Sean Thomas, the individual, talking to him, or whether it's his company talking to him, you've got to make that distinction under the law. 9 times out of 10, it's not going to come back and bite you in the butt. But that one time that it does, it could put you out of business. A lot of people don't realize that in the United States, during your business career, you're looking at being part of a claim or part of a lawsuit an average of 3 times. So by making sure that when you broadcast live, you're letting everyone know in a fun way, you know, that this is Sammy the Surfer from Surfer Inc. Today I'm going to tell you all about my new boards. When you do that, you're protecting yourself, so keep that in mind. Use contracts and written agreements. I've helped hundreds of companies start up. I've consulted over the last 30 years of practicing law, and what I've noticed over the last 7 to 8 years, primarily because of social and digital, because now it's easy for all of us to click and set up a website. It's easy for all of us to click and set up doing business, is that people are doing business with a couple of texts, with a couple of emails. They're creating partnerships. They're coming up with ideas on these digital handshakes. And I wish that was okay. I love doing business with a handshake. For me, my handshake means everything, but it's not that way for everyone. If you're forming a partnership with somebody, if you're entering into a contract with someone, if you're selling products and services to somebody, make sure that if it's appropriate, that you have a written agreement or contract that lays out all of the terms and conditions of your business relationship. It's a business, so treat it as one. Critically important. Mediation and arbitration agreements are so valuable if used correctly. And what I mean by this is that if Elon Musk in his Tesla decides that he wants to bring an action against Sammy the Surfer, a properly drafted mediation and arbitration agreement will prohibit that case from getting into our court system. What will happen is the parties will first have to use a private lawyer or a retired judge, for example, or a mediation service or an arbitration service to work out the details and to try to reach a settlement. What I found over 30 years of litigation, and this is what I do, I litigate, a lot less time is spent mediating and arbitrating cases than litigating a case and take it to trial. So these are really good clauses to have. A lot of trial lawyers will tell you not to buy into mediation and arbitration agreements, but you have to consider the source. Why are they telling you that? You know, is it taking business out of their pocket because they're not, instead of representing you for 3 to 4 years in litigation and trying a case, you're going to be done with this thing in 6 to 8 months. So there's a caveat, and I'm really simplifying everything, but think about using mediation and arbitration agreements in your provisions. Venue and attorney's fees clauses. A venue clause, and under the example that I gave you, is that when this South African surfer purchased Sammy the Surfer surfboard, he entered into a written contract. It was part of the purchase agreement that said if there's any litigations, any claims that take place, they're going to take place in Los Angeles County, California. It forces people to come to your backyard or to the venue that you're selecting to litigate your cases. In the case that we talked about, if Elon Musk brought that case, he's not bound by the venue clause, but what he may be bound by is an attorney's fees clause. And all that means is that if you have a written agreement with the people that you're doing business with, that if there is litigation, whether it's a valid case or if it's a frivolous lawsuit, the prevailing party is entitled to be reimbursed for reasonable attorney's fees. The reason this is important is it doesn't apply generally unless it's in writing in the United States. So if you put it in writing and it's drafted correctly, the power of this is that if you get sued or if your company gets sued, you can go out and get a very well-respected, qualified lawyer to step into your file and protect you and protect your business. Otherwise, it might be more difficult to get a qualified lawyer to come in, especially if there's nothing at the end of the case that says, listen, if we win, we're going to be reimbursed all of our out-of-pocket attorney's fees and expenses. You know, it all comes down to relationships. It all comes down to being kind to people and being hard on issues. And when I watch business people do this, I see good things happen. I see many, many cases that could have easily been litigated that are never filed in the first place because the business people feel this way about each other. And when it comes to social media, what I found is with all the hugs that I've watched, that I've gotten today, in the last couple of Periscope summits that I've been to, this is how a lot of us feel about each other. And it's because of the relationships that we built online. I'm suggesting that if you're doing business with somebody doesn't have that same mindset, go out of your way and try to build that mindset with your clients and your customers. You know, it's speaking of Elon Musk, his ex-wife Justine Musk was asked once what she thought made people like Elon, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Ellison, people like that, what made them successful in life? And her response was, and I'm paraphrasing, her response was, well, you know, they have dyslexia, they have ADD, they don't pay attention to what other people tell them, they dance to their own song, they do things their own way. They don't like to spend a lot of time reading. They like to spend a lot of time executing. I guess the bottom line is that they're a square peg in a round hole. That's what makes these people successful. And in concluding today, what I'd like to share with all of you is that when you go out in the world and you're doing business online, I want you to keep in mind these 6 tips that we talked about today, but I also want you to go out and be a square peg in a round hole. Make a ruckus and do things your way. And if you follow these 6 steps, I think you're going to be in really good shape. If anybody challenges you when you try to put your square peg into a round hole, you know who to call. I got your back. Thank you, you guys. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you. I don't know if we're doing questions or not. Are we still behind? Yeah, because I know we're behind schedule. So yes, Aaron. Aaron. Sure, that's a great question. So the question had to do with venue and what are the pros and cons of having a venue provision in a contract. And what's important, and let me just, maybe everyone didn't hear your question, but the reason venue is so important is that if Robert Scoble and I have a legal issue and he's in South Africa, like our example, and I'm here in California, the last thing he's going to want to do is come to the United States and litigate with me in Los Angeles. The last thing I want to do is go to South Africa and litigate with him in South Africa, right? It's expensive, it's inconvenient, the laws are different. Here in the United States, the laws are different in each state. The rules are different. Here in Los Angeles and Orange County, we know the judges, we know defense counsel. There's a dynamic there that helps us do a very good job for our clients. If I have to go to New York, if I have to go to South Africa, that may not be the case. And so yes, there are a lot of concepts behind having a properly drafted venue clause that will keep you out of court or help maximize the chances of you prevailing in your case because you've selected where you want that case litigated. So part of your selection with the venue clause is will the jurors be biased? And they're not going to know about the venue clause, generally speaking, but you want to be in a jurisdiction that's friendly to your type of business. Delaware, Nevada, a couple of other states, for example, are corporation friendly. The laws are written where they favor the corporations. California is not a bad state either. So all of these things, depending on your business, your product, or your service, would dictate where you're going to have your venue in your contracts. Yes, Ross?
Great speech. Ross Brand from lastuniverse.com. That's how you want us to do it, right?
You're safe.
What do you do when you have two people who each have their own business and they have a show together, right, and live streaming? And there may not be any money involved in the beginning, but what happens when they split? Which business ends up owning it? Do they need some type of
Sure.
agreement? Do they need to form a business together just for that content? How do they end up deciding who owns the content, who can monetize it later on?
So it sounds like a marriage to me, right? And what happens in a marriage when there's a divorce, right? I mean, unless you've got everything worked out ahead of time in a written agreement, it could get really, really messy. And it depends about what the numbers are involved. So Ross's question had to do with a couple of people that are live streaming. Jennifer and I have a show, the Show.live, every Wednesday. Very informal business arrangement. We're just having fun together. But the show is generating some value. And the smart way to handle things would be to put your agreement in writing. I don't recommend general partnerships. General partnerships, I will not do those for my clients. Like I said earlier, limited liability companies and corporations are the way to go. The problem with general partnerships is it creates too much liability for the non-wrongdoing general partner. You got to be careful with those. So I would suggest that these shows set themselves up as a limited liability company or a corporation, depending on their state and depending on what the show's about. Different industries have different requirements. Great. It would be a separate agreement, separate from your business. So Sammy the surfer, if he was doing a weekly show with you, a live streaming surfing show, it would be a completely separate name, trademark, trade name, agreements, and everything else. Your company's entering into that agreement with Sammy. Sammy's company's entering into that agreement with you. Yes, sir. Cut me off when you need to. All right, last question. So, well, first of all, when I fly my drones, I'm not breaking the law. All right, and I fly very early in the morning down at Strands in South Orange County. I think Mary probably knows where that is. Nobody else is around. It's a legal place to fly. There are rules and regulations with flying drones, so make sure you're up to speed on what those rules and regulations are. Unfortunately, most people don't follow the rules, and it makes it uncomfortable and bad for all of us. But be aware of other people's privacy. Never fly over people. You can't fly at night unless you're certified. And you just got to use common sense. And that flying drones, by the way, has been a great way to build new relationships. It has nothing to do with practicing law. It has everything to do with building relationships with other drone pilots around the world, like I talked about earlier. Thanks, you guys. I've already taken up enough time. Thank you very much. Thank you.